Greetings, everyone. I am deeply honored today to be in conversation with Jude Currivan, and we're going to be talking about this critical time in our evolution of human consciousness and how we can come back into balance and come back into connection with the oneness of all that is. So thank you for being here today, Jude.
Oh, Heather, it's my great pleasure to be with you and the wonderful community that we're all here as members of today.
Well, let me briefly introduce you and then we'll dive into our conversation. And it's hard to introduce you, Jude, because of how much you've done in this incarnation, but I will try to summarize it. Dr. Jude Currivan is a cosmologist, planetary healer, futurist, author, previously one of the most senior businesswomen in the UK, and co-founder of WholeWorld-View. She integrates leading edge science, research into consciousness, and universal wisdom teachings into a holistic worldview. She holds a PhD in archaeology from the University of Reading in the UK and a master's degree in physics from Oxford University. She is the author of 7 nonfiction books, including her latest books, The Cosmic Hologram, Information at the Center of Creation. I love that book. And The Story of Gaia, the Big Breath, and the Evolutionary Journey of Our Conscious Planet. She's a member of the Evolutionary Leaders Circle, and in 2017, she co-founded WholeWorld-View to facilitate the understanding, experiencing, and embodying of unity awareness in service to conscious evolution. And she also teaches at Ubiquity University and California Institute of Integral Studies. Extraordinary. I mean, I am so impressed by the depth of your knowledge, Jude, and the depth of your wisdom. And in particular, how you are reweaving that ancient wisdom and indigenous understanding with our cutting edge science today. So thank you for being such a strong voice in this critical time on the planet. And I'd love to start with just talking about how we are at this critical tipping point in our evolutionary journey as humanity. And you talk a lot about how we need to really understand cutting edge science and this ancient wisdom to remember that we are a part of a sentient, conscious cosmos, and that we can be co-creators with that. So can you talk some more about that?
Thank you, Heather, and I'd be delighted to. I mean, I think if I'm going to speak to it, I probably need to go back to when I was a very small girl, because really from that time when I was only 4 years old, I was experiencing the nature of reality in a very expansive way. And I was appreciating that the appearance of this physical realm, our universe, was not what I was literally experiencing by my walking between worlds from that very early age. And so, in that sense, I've always known that we are, as you just so beautifully described, we are microcosmic co creators of a living and loving and evolutionary and multidimensional universe. And yet, of course, that wasn't what I was taught at school. It wasn't what I was taught at Oxford University either. And yet, when I was able to sort of delve into ancient traditions and indigenous teachings, spiritually based teachings at their most foundational, that's what they were all sharing. That's what they were all saying. And so for me, my journey has been this dance, scenic route, as you were describing, of a curiosity both to understand from a very personal perspective, in a way, the nature of reality, but in doing so, to be able to serve others and share with others, so that at this critical time, at this vital, pivotal time of our human species, I can hopefully serve to help us literally remember who we really are. And for that, I give wholehearted gratitude to the many, many, many generations of mystics and spiritual seekers and sages and shamans and ordinary folks who've had extraordinary experiences and shared them. All that incredible community of exploration that's come now to this point, together with leading edge science now, converging into what is both an ancient and an evolutionary unitive perspective of the nature of the world and who we are within its incredible abundance and diversity.
You know, it is amazing you trace back to childhood because you had those experiences early on of being taught and mentored by spirit guides and your own attunement to your psychic gifts. And then you've delved into exploring the wealth of knowledge in this world. So you've really integrated left brain, right brain ways of knowing and that ancient understanding of being in altered states of consciousness to truly understand our experience of this third dimensional reality. So you're an incredible bridge for us in helping us come back into that left brain, right brain rebalancing of our ways of knowing.
Yes, and I'm very grateful. I feel very privileged to have, to be on this journey. But what I really want to add to what you just shared is this is who we all are. This is who we all are. I remember one of my spirit guides very early on saying to me, "You're not special." And my mum would say, if ever I was getting a bit uppity, "Get over yourself." From very early on, it's been very clear to me that I'm not no more special than everybody. Everybody is both ordinary and extraordinary. We're all both and. And so for me, what I hope I'm able to do is to serve everyone in whatever way they feel able to open what I consider to be this invite of the universe to remember, and for us to, at this pivotal moment, to feel inspired and empowered to step into this next adventure of what it can mean to be human. Our evolutionary potential is vast. If we can feel able with our hearts, you talk about left brain, right brain. The shamans talk about the longest journey in the world being 6 inches, from our heads to our hearts. When we do that, then truly we can integrate to the wholeness of who we really are, it seems to me.
I so love your talking about that remembrance of who we truly are, because, and I know you also are a gifted astrologer, but from that astrological understanding, and you and I have talked a little bit about this previously, just in terms of looking at that journey through the processional cycle with the understanding of the Yuga cycle, we're coming out of that Kali Yuga, the time of forgetting. And we are opening again to a remembrance of who we are and that awareness that we're a part of the consciousness of all that is. And you talk about in your writing about this crucial tipping point that we're in, that we've been in this illusion of separation and this scientific materialism that then is integrated with our economic systems, our political systems, but it's led us into trauma and into polarization and separation. And that this is such a critical tipping point and turning point to wake up and come back into that awareness. And you talk a lot about we're not creators of our own reality, we're co-creators. So talk more about how we are fractal expressions of this consciousness of the cosmos.
Ooh, I'd love to. What, in 2 minutes or less, of course. So let's do. Well, so much of your wisdom there and how you shared that is so profound. And just a few threads from that to sort of perhaps weave it together into a response to that question. First of all, I think it would be, first of all, there's no place for astrology in a paradigm of materialism and separation, a scientific paradigm of materialism and separation. What now, though, we have with this leading edge science, as you were referring to earlier, is the evidence at all scales of existence and across numerous fields of research that are turning that paradigm on its head. And instead, yes, it is converging with universal wisdom teachings to reveal our universe, first of all, meaningfully exists and purposefully evolves as a living and loving and unitive multidimensional entity. Now, we can go into that more if we'd like to, but that paradigm has the natural place for astrology, because what we're seeing is the wholeness of our universe, its sentience, expressed and embodies at all scales from its wholeness to every pixel. So we are individuated co-creators of that sentient, self-aware beings. But on a microcosmic level, on a mesocosmic level, if we scale up, we can talk about our planetary home, Gaia's sentience. We can talk about the sentience of our entire solar system, our solar family, with its dynamic, interrelational, collaborative, evolutionary journey too, and keep going out. But the vastness, what I love, is the vastness of what I call the big breath of our universe. In its entirety breathes through our little breaths in every moment. So going back to the point on astrology, what astrology has for me is an incredible guide to that cosmic sentience, which is embodied and expressed within our collective psyche and within our personal psyche. So on a collective psyche, the precessional ages of our solar system, which is due to the way Gaia, our planetary home Gaia's axis, sort of wobbles over a precessional epoch of something like 2,160 years, that moves forward for a 12th of the zodiac each of that time. So an overall precessional cycle of something of the order of 26,000 years, but it's never repeated. A wonderful healer called Jill Peirce talks about a spiral is a circle in time. So astrology is a circle in time, a spiral. So it's like a spiral staircase, but turned on its side and going through the flow of time. So, the age of Pisces, for example, a precessional cycle ago, had the same essence of what that would have been, but it's embodied anew now. And because each of the precessional orbits of the planets themselves are in slightly different relationships, so it's always part of an overall evolutionary journey. But I would say that at this time, we are on this cusp of moving from the age of Pisces, as astrologers would know it, to the age of Aquarius. But what's really key, and we've touched on this before, for me many years ago, I'm a student of history, her story as much as his story, but a story of our human journey, and in fact, the journey of our entire universe. But if I look at the astrological cycles, what I appreciated some time ago is that the name we give to this sort of 2,160 or thereabouts cycle of say, Pisces or Aquarius or Capricorn or whatever, is that they embody rather like a wave. And astrology talks a lot about waves. And waves begin, they peak, they fall away. So in astrological terms, that's cardinal, beginning, fixed, peaking, and mutable, falling away. So each astrological age of this 2,000 slightly plus years embodies a threefold essence of consciousness, of sentience. So for example, the Piscean age, which started just over 2,000 years ago, brought in with it these incredible spiritual insights, Jesus is the obvious example, but prior to that, the Torah and going through that Buddhism and on through to Islam, but all of them, Lao-Tzu, many different tidal parts of this tidal movement into the age of Pisces. That was beginning, but what was peaking was the prior age of Aries. And Aries is about individuality, selfhood, which is all great. The prior age to that is the age of Taurus. So this is structure, this is grounding, resourcing. So the Piscean age hasn't just been a spiritual impulse, it's been a spiritual impulse lensed through structure of religion, lensed through a perception of self that's progressively been a sort of a separate self from that larger we and all. So as that's now coming to an end, and you spoke to this, the beginning of the age of Aquarius. Aquarius is all about the me and the we and the all. It's that empowerment. But as that's beginning to come through, what is now peaking is that Piscean spirituality. And what is falling away is that extreme individuality of Aries. And what's falling away, just dissolving, is the real spirit, sorry, is the real structure, Taurian fixedness that is now dissolving. So now we're moving into an era where our evolutionary potential can move into this sense of individuated co-creativity and linking up and lifting up in the we-ness and of all of us and the allness of a unitive cosmos. So it's a wonderful time. And these ages come about more often than not, as does the whole of evolutionary progress through our entire evolutionary journey from the beginning of our universe, through challenge, sometimes through existential threats. It never comes when we're lying in a deck chair having a snooze in the middle of the afternoon. If only.
Well, you talk about breakdown or breakthrough, and that's, the energy of these tipping points in systems, and that we do have choice.
Yeah.
And I think part of what you're speaking of in your work is how if we open, and that's some of the gift of astrology, it is the language of the consciousness of the cosmos that can help us open to be in tune with that. And you talk a lot about how the key is to open our hearts, our awareness to this consciousness of the cosmos so that we are collaborating with it instead of at odds with it. And I think that's some of the critical turning point that we're in right now. Can we get out of that out of balance expression that I think was an out of balance expression of the age of Aries that got us mired in that sense of separation, to come back into, as you're talking about, the gift of Aquarius is to honor our diversity and that we're each an individual fractal expression of that cosmic consciousness, but we're all a part of that oneness.
Oh, beautifully put, and wholeheartedly agree with that. Perhaps the thing that I would add to that, though, is we can often sort of fall into a blame game, and that's blaming others, they blame us, we blame ourselves game. But one of the things I learned as a very, very young girl, growing up in the Midlands of England, the granddaughter of coal miners, my mum a homemaker, all of that was nothing was wasted. In a practical sense, nothing was wasted. Food was never thrown away. Clothes were always make, do, and mend. And that wasn't sort of with a paucity or a sense of sort of poverty. It was just, this is the way we can, this is healthy. This is the way we are within ourselves, with each other, with our wider surroundings. So for me as a human species, again, and going back to the whole universal story, I would say that nothing in existence is wasted, either in space or through time. So if we look back 2,000 years ago, at the beginning of the Piscean age, with those three things playing through, we've learned a vast amount in personally and collectively through this time. And yes, we've gone to the extreme of this perspective of separation. And yes, we embody trauma because of the fears and all the rest of it that comes with the loneliness of that sense of separation. And yet, I would ask us, would we perhaps be able to embody the empathy we can embody as a result of going through that, where we realize we've been perpetrators, we've been on the receiving end, we've done it to ourselves, and how painful that is. Because it's through pain that often empathy is gained. And going back to astrology, of course, one of the great astrological archetypes that's only really come into our awareness in the last 40 odd years is that of Chiron. And Chiron is so emblematic, symbolic, because Chiron in Greek mythology, as you well know, and I'm sure many of the folks with us know, was the wounded healer in Greek mythology. He was eternal, and yet he was wounded. So he had to bear the pain of that wound. He could not die. But what that pain gave him was empathy and compassion. And as the wounded healer, he became the great teacher of the Greek heroes, such as Achilles and others. So Chiron in each of our charts, but in our collective chart from the late 70s, seems to me to be guiding us on this journey of acknowledging trauma and literally an ongoing healing journey. And I feel it's a healing journey into deeper empathy and compassion because we've known the pain. If we hadn't have known the pain, I'm not sure we would be able to come to a progressively awareness of what it is like to be in other shoes, what it is like that we all walk this earth journey together.
That's beautiful, Jude. It reminds me of Rumi's saying that the wound is where the light can come through. And perhaps what you're saying, and this fits with your sense that everything that unfolds has meaning. It's not random. And that perhaps we needed to experience this extreme of separation to open to empathy and to understand the consequences of separation.
Yes.
Come back into the joy and incredible harmony of coming back into unity.
I love this.
And unity consciousness. So that helps us hold it in a different way. But I think as you're talking about Chiron, it's critical that we do the healing
Yes.
to come to empathy and love rather than staying caught in the trauma, which keeps us in polarization and pain and the perpetuation of trauma.
Exactly so. Exactly so. And I mean, when we look back 30, 40 years, this was hardly recognized. We're very clearly now in this journey of homecoming, it seems to me. But also, if we go back, 2000 or more years ago, that sense of individuation and responsibility was not within our collective psyche. So again, we've pushed the extreme, yes, but I hope and trust and really do feel that not only is this a healing journey into our empathy, but it also brings us into this sense of our uniqueness, that within the unitive reality of our universe, it doesn't express its unity and uniformity. It expresses it in radical diversity. So it seems to me that this is also a journey into this literally radical, root and branch understanding that we are each unique expressions of its wholeness. And I love now more and more the word belonging, because that is coming into beautiful clarity, that it's not just its unity is expressed in diversity, but it goes beyond that. Not just unity and inclusion, but unity and belonging. All and every one of us, just as every leaf on every tree, just as every snowflake, just as every drop of water belongs to the entire sentience of our living and loving universe. And that is a journey where nothing has been wasted, it seems to me, to bring us to this point and to invite us onwards into this great adventure of what awaits us if we say yes to this invitation.
Well, I love that description that we're a part of a conscious and loving cosmos. And this, to me, circles back to another theme that you talk about, the importance of reweaving that sacred feminine wisdom with our sacred masculine wisdom, because to me, that is the understanding of our interdependence and interconnectedness, our being in relationship, our belonging with our capacity for our separate expression of creativity. And another astrological symbol of that I think is getting more and more fully understood is Ophiuchus.
Yes.
That great healer who is the serpent bearer, holding the most ancient symbol of the sacred feminine. So say some more about how we can be in that journey of reweaving sacred feminine wisdom with the sacred masculine.
Well, essentially I say all traditions, certainly the traditions that I particularly especially revere for their profound insights tend to appreciate the wholeness of our universe, its multidimensionality, its sentience, is differentiated first from 1 into 2, 2 into 3. And as the I Ching says, and from the 3, 10,000 things are born. So this understanding doesn't just refer to, as you refer to so beautifully, the sacred feminine and masculine as it plays through each of us, but to the universe as a whole. Some term it the divine feminine, divine masculine, but it is this innate differentiation, because if the universe was just an undifferentiated wholeness, how boring would that be? Apart from anything else, how boring would that be? But it does, and whether it's the level of atoms or even smaller than that, the letter of quarks, there are quarks that relate with each other, that make up protons and neutrons. An atom has protons and neutrons and electrons. Every time we scale up, we get this oneness differentiated into 2, 2 into 3, and then literally, as I Ching says, from the 3, 10,000 things are born. And I could get very physicsy and very sciencey on this, but to go beyond that, that plays through that perhaps intuitive understanding, and that deep understanding plays through so many of our universal wisdom teachings. So when we look at, for example, going back to astrology, I mentioned earlier the waves that play through astrology, the threefold nature of cardinal and fixed and mutable. We then go up a level into the fourfold nature of the elements. We then move up into the 12-fold nature of the zodiac. But again, and interesting, I'll come back to that in a second, but going back to the feminine and masculine, those attributes, those yin, I love describing them as the Chinese tradition does as yin and yang, because they transcend gender. Yeah. They're more the sort of the out breath and the in breath of the pulse of reality. And so in a sense, yang is the out breath, is the assertiveness, whereas yin is the welcoming in and the inclusivity. And both are vital, because we can't breathe without both. The ancient tradition is that it takes two columns to hold up the sky. It takes 2 wings to fly. It takes both, and each are within us and expressed within us. But the third fold is also key, because when we talk about the masculine and feminine, the Ida, and in Vedic tradition, in Indian tradition, the Ida and the Pingala, and you sort of talked about the sort of caduceus, the healing column that's prevalent in Greek tradition, but far beyond that. There is that central staff, and that is a child energy. And in Indian tradition, it's the Sushumna. And within our bodies, it's the play of this masculine, feminine, Ida Pingala, up our chakras. And when they are integrated, as you described so beautifully, then that awakens the child, the sacred child, the Sushumna, the activated Buddha, the activated Christed consciousness within us. So when you speak about Ophiuchus is both the serpent bearer, His foot, astronomically, is actually on the galactic center. There's lots we could go there with.
Yes.
Also, he's often now understood as being the 13th zodiac sign. Now, 12 into 13 in many esoteric and spiritual traditions is the culmination into cosmic sentience, into unconditional love, whether it's Christed, Buddhic, or any other tradition. So 12 into 13 is a profoundly symbolic number, numerology, resonance that brings us from the 12-fold nature of our human earth walk, even as we expand into it, fully embodied into the divine, the divinity, which is our deepest, truest nature.
Mhm. Mm, mm. So beautifully said, Jude. And I love that Ophiuchus is opposite in the sky with Orion, which I
Yes.
see as so symbolic in ancient cultures and cultures around the globe of our journey collectively as humanity. So Ophiuchus is guiding us in how to come back into unity consciousness, how to come back into wholeness. And I love that Ophiuchus has one foot on the galactic center, but is also standing over, which the ancient Egyptians saw as, being the protector of or caring for
Yes.
Scorpio.
Exactly.
Scorpio, the constellation that is about our trauma and our death, rebirth, our going into the darkness to transform. So it's the story is in the sky about how we can heal and come back into connection.
I love that. And I wholeheartedly agree. And in a sense, Ophiuchus is the largest scale galactic Chiron. So again, we're scaling up and scaling down. And again, we find that with Orion, because in Orion, of course, is the hunter. And so we get that very sort of that journey without judgment. But it is that full circle because, as you say, they stand at what's often called the silver gate and the golden gate of the sky at either end of the ecliptic, at either end, therefore, of the sort of galactic, the Milky Way perspective. So, yes, isn't it wonderful that our universe is so extraordinarily literally marvelous, filled with marvels, wonderful, that we can understand this story at every scale, from the stars and the galaxy and the wholeness of our universe down to each and every one of us, that sort of personal, intimate connection with all that is.
It's so beautiful. And you talk about how the consciousness of our cosmos speaks through symbols and signs and synchronicities and stories, and that everything is a reflection of that meaning, of that story of our oneness, what you call the cosmic hologram. And it really is, like you're saying, we need to open to it and remember it's all around us and it's within us.
All the. Yeah, exactly. And of course, the hologram is our sort of modern day terminology, taken from a discovery. I mean, it's an invention, but it's more a discovery in a sense of the innate wholeness of our universe played out at every level of its pixelation, because that's what holograms do. If you slice and dice a hologram of an apple into its pixels, you'll get each pixel reflecting the apple of the wholeness. And in ancient times, the Hermetic tradition of ancient Egypt, as above, so below, go back to Vedic tradition again, and we have a beautiful concept called Indra's net, which describes our universe or the nature of reality as being filled with numerous gems, each of many, many different facets, each reflecting the other, each connected to all the others with golden threads. That is a beautiful depiction of what we would now call, and I call in my book, the cosmic hologram. And leading edge science is actually giving us the evidence that this isn't just an idea. The holographic principle, the holographic universe, is the leading now model of cosmologists, because we've got evidence not just at cosmological scales, but every scale down to the tiniest. So we can put all of it together in a really simple way. For science, it's really simple. I don't mean that facetiously. What I'm trying to say,
Really?
really, we are very good at making complications, but this truly is as simple as it could be, but no simpler, which is something that Einstein said, and I've added a little bit to serve its evolutionary purpose.
Mm.
It's not just that our universe meaningfully exists; it purposefully evolves.
And it feels like as it's evolving and we're moving into the age of Aquarius, that is that remembrance that everything is energy and everything is interconnected. And I know that you're good friends with Elizabeth Sahtouris, and she, in her own way, talks about exactly what you're talking about, but she describes it as an evolution biologist as it's time for us as humanity to mature.
Yes.
Go from that sense of survival of the fittest and competition to do what every species does, which is mature into that realization that we actually thrive through interdependence and our awareness of our interconnectedness. And you talk, and you've given some beautiful stories in your books about your conversations with plants, your attunement to the sentience of the life around us that can guide us into that wisdom and into that remembrance.
Very much so. I mean, our planetary mother, Gaia, is our primary mother. And so in the story of Gaia, my latest book, I really trace her story. But of course, our stories begin before us. They go back as far as we can have a memory of. And so Gaia's story begins at the very beginning of our universe and continues then along this incredible evolutionary arc until this moment. And Elizabeth has been such a seminal voice in all of this, in helping us in so many ways to wake up and remember. What I would say, though, a couple of things, and she would agree with this, I'm sure, is that we talk about energy and everything's energy, but we've known after 100 years of 20th century science of quantum physics, which is all about energy, matter, and relativity physics, which is all about space time, that they are not the most foundational understanding we now have. That when we go down to this deeper level, which of course then naturally brings sentience, consciousness into this understanding, is that we talk now about meaningful information being the foundational stuff of our universe that expresses itself in complementary ways as energy, matter, and space time. But what that does is naturally brings in, inherently, fundamentally brings in all pervasive meaning into our existence, all pervasive purpose into the evolutionary impulse of our universe. So we needed to go to that deeper level and the holographic how-to manual, as it were, to really then understand how cosmic, an infinite and eternal cosmic mind can have a great thought, a great and finite thought that is a universe where mind and consciousness aren't what we have, but literally what we and the whole world are, because that then truly brings us home. That brings us home.
Hmm. And it is all about now coming home to our true selves and that connection with consciousness. And I love, Jude, your description. I think it is so profound to hold that awareness that our universe began as a big breath, as opposed to a big bang. That so reorients our story and our own awareness to that expression of the thought, the intention, the purpose, the meaning of that consciousness into information and into the development of our universe and Gaia, our planet. It's a whole other experience to think of that breath as the beginning rather than this random explosion.
Well, yes, and the evidence is there for it. We now know that when we do go back to that first moment of space-time of our universe, nearly 14 billion years ago, in its tiniest state, because of course the Big Bang was coined by an incredible astronomer called Fred Hoyle, Sir Fred Hoyle, who was Yorkshireman. So told it as it was, put it that way. And he didn't like the idea of our universe having a finite beginning, because when this was all coming forward, there were two competing theories. One was that our universe was infinite and eternal, the other was not, because the evidence was showing the further back we went in our universe, it got smaller and smaller and smaller. So the logic was that it would have begun in a finite time ago in its tiniest state. And that's the evidence has piled up enormously since then. So he coined the Big Bang because he didn't like that at all. We know it was not big. We absolutely get that. But as you say, the connotations with a bang are that it's chaotic and random and meaningless. We now know that our universe began and has continued ever since as incredibly fine-tuned. If you know the basic relationships at the heart of physics were out by something like 1 in 1,000 trillion, we wouldn't be here. Our universe would have hardly begun. It began in exquisitely fine-tuned and ordered state. So I came up with the idea of the big breath, not just as that first moment, but that ongoing breath as space has continued to expand ever since and time has flowed forward. Because again, that refers to ancient wisdom, the Vedic tradition of our universe being the breath of God. And in Vedic, in Sanskrit, prana is both breath and spirit. So it does, as you say, it reframes our relationship. Because of course, the big breath of our universe, its vastness, breathes through our little breaths. Every breath we take.
It's such a beautiful, powerful image, and it fits with how you talk about we can wake up and remember that connection to the consciousness of the cosmos by going within. It's not outside of us. It is outside of us, and it is
Both and, yeah, exactly.
yeah. And one of the things that you talk about that I think is really important is that we can open our awareness to that and come back into that understanding of our oneness through our hearts and through opening to joy and
Yeah.
gratitude and love.
Yes.
That opens us to that connection with the consciousness of all that is, and that fear and getting caught in our minds and rationality separates us from that. So it feels like that's a very important part of our own daily practice now in how to come back into remembrance of who we truly are.
You're right. And it is so, and it's simple. You know, people say it's not easy. And I say, no, I know it's not easy, but it's simple. But the point is, the more we are open to doing that, Heather, as you say, these literally very simple things that we can do in every moment. It's rather like aerobics for the soul in that sense.
Good.
You know, whether it's going into a garden, our beloved Gaia's beauty all around us, but just taking a breath, you know, as we breathe in, to consciously breathe that sense of our entire universe, our loving universe, our loving universe, breathing through. So as we breathe that love in, as we breathe out, we can breathe our love out into the world. We can choose to be grateful, even if we've had a really challenging day. I've never had a day, however difficult, and I've had some incredibly difficult days, where I couldn't identify or couldn't find one thing to be grateful for. One thing, one tiny thing, or a massive thing, or many things. So the more, as you say, we practice love and joy and gratitude, and just breathing, and breathing with that sense of in breath and out breath, and that, you know, trusting, learning to trust every step of the way as we do this, realizing how much we are loved, how much the universe wants us to feel healthy and be well, and to know that we're a member of microcosmic co-creator of its magnificence and its grandeur and its potential, and microcosmic co-creators of its vast communities of life. We haven't even met the folks in our neighborhood, particularly yet. We're newbies as a species. We're still newbies. We're like the opening day of, the first day of school. If we can say yes, my goodness me, what an incredible adventure awaits us.
And it is so key, as you're saying, the trust,
Yeah,
that realization that we are loved, we belong, we've never been alone.
never.
And then we can trust, even on those difficult days, that we're held in a loving, conscious cosmos, and that everything has purpose, everything has meaning, even if we can't see it in the moment. But we're being guided into this journey of awakening and healing and awareness to, like you're saying, come back into connection with each other, with the sentience of life around us, and potentially our galactic
Yeah.
community. But
And
we
ourselves, because this journey of separation, going back to what we were saying, Heather, not with blame or shame, and it's brought us to this place, which is actually incredibly potent. And it's almost not despite the challenges, but because of the challenges. Because every time that evolutionary leap to greater complexity has happened in Gaia's story, it's involved cooperation. It's moved to that next level of collaborative cooperation. And that's what we're finding now. And ultimately, for us to be able to do that, it does come back to what you were saying. It's our own inner healing, our own awareness, our own openness. So it comes back to each and every one of us, to our choice, to our choices. Because our collective choices are made up of our personal, individual choices.
Well, and as Rupert Sheldrake and others talks about, we then, our choices affect the morphogenic field, affect the collective consciousness. But as you said, part of the gift of this journey of separation is realizing our own responsibility, that we make those choices to come back into right connection, right relationship with all that is.
Yeah. And that sometimes I hear stories like that. If we have extraterrestrial communities, why aren't they helping us? For the same reason that when I was learning to ride a bicycle, after a certain time, my mum stood back and let me get on with it. Because if she kept the back of the bike all the time, I would never learn to ride a bike, let alone to grow up. So this seems to me our moment of choice to grow up. You said about this earlier. It's our opportunity and our choice to wake up and to grow up, as Ken Wilber talks to clean up, as Dustin Perma talks to, and then to show up. And I've added a couple more that people are also feeling now, to link up and lift up. Because we can do all of that, but that first step in that journey into our remembered wholeness is to wake up and to make our choices. And the universe offers us opportunities, it seems to me, every moment to do that.
And I feel like we're in such an accelerated time where we are being supported to see what needs to heal and to wake up and to open, as you have talked about in a lot of your presentations. We're also opening up this more telepathic way of understanding and this capacity to utilize our psychic gifts to connect to the wisdom of the cosmos. In the few minutes that we have left, Jude, I would like to just highlight your WholeWorld-View.org site, and I'm going to put that link below. Because as you said a minute ago, as we wake up, we can collaborate with this consciousness of the cosmos and come back into collaboration and community with each other. And that work that you're doing is so profound in terms of helping define a unitive narrative and how we can be in community to support this interspiritual understanding and new perspective to guide us into this new age.
Very much so, Heather. And our strap line, we got two sort of strap lines in a way, a whole worldview. We talk about serving the understanding, experiencing, and embodying of unitive awareness. Because, understanding, some people need to, in their own sense, need to understand, for example, how to build a car. Others just want to be in the passenger seat and know it's the wheels aren't going to drop off and everything in between. So understanding has that whole spectrum of perspective. But to really, for us to undertake together this journey we're describing, experiencing is key. And then we can move step by step by step at whatever pace each of us chooses to into that embodiment. So that website offers a lot of resources for all of those things. It links into many of our partners globally who are building community and offering other resources to move forward. And it also invites folks to sign up to a regular newsletter where stories are shared and invitations are sent, to be able to link up and lift up together, because this is the time. This is really the time. And I just like to sort of go back to one thing that we're sort of talking about at the beginning. We're in a time that often is called a meta crisis because of all the existential challenges and threats. I'm really reframing this, or inviting us to reframe it as a metamorphosis.
Beautiful.
Yeah, because we've been a caterpillar species with all that we talked about. But this is our moment where we can, it seems to me, transform into a pollinator species, into a butterfly. And I'm so hoping and trusting and loving the potential of what that can, flourish and mean as we move forward together.
Oh, thank you for that, Jude. I love that because then again, it takes us out of fear, out of that crisis mentality,
Yeah.
into that celebration of this transformation that we're in, into a new way of being and a new form of consciousness.
Yes.
Well, I know you have a meeting to go to. We could talk for hours, but I am so grateful for all that you're doing to be embodying this change and supporting us on this planet and remembering we're Gaians and we can come back into that oneness with all that is. And I also thank this community for being a part of that process and that expanding consciousness and coming from love.
Yes.
So thank you for being in this conversation, Jude.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you so much for all you're doing. And just as I jump off, the other strapline we have at Whole Worldview is because often folks say, what can I do? Going back to what you were saying about responsibility, and to do it with love and joy and gratitude. So we talk about act local, feel global, and think cosmic.
Beautiful. We'll end on that note. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you so much.